It's rare on a day for us to go out there and make a video about the Winnipeg Jets and the New York Islanders. But we are doing exactly that because we now have some word as to a rejected trade that was vetoed, blocked, wrapped up with a pretty bow on top, and tossed in the garbage. Today we are talking about the Brock Nelson trade. Yeah, so we spoke about the real Brock Nelson trade when Nelson was sent over to the Colorado Avalanche from the New York Islanders. It was a big, shocking move because, hey, Lou Lamoriello is putting moves together that prioritize the future instead of just always focusing on the now. And a lot of folks were kind of debating whether or not this would be the first domino falling in what would be a bigger, more longer-term vision for the Islanders. Lamoriello then shortly got the can after the season. The Islanders got the first overall pick. They hired Matthew Darche, who is a lot younger and who is probably a lot more willing to go through a rebuild. And now names like Dobson, Horvat, and Barzal are on the table. But it all started with Brock Nelson, who got sent over to Colorado. Today, though, we are diving into a piece on rg.org from Marco D'Amico, which talks about how Brock Nelson blocked a trade to the Winnipeg Jets before the Islanders dealt him to Colorado. The link to this piece will be in the description, but Marco D'Amico does have the scoop. On the eve of the 2025 trade deadline, the New York Islanders dealt pending UFA Brock Nelson and prospect William Dufour to the Colorado Avalanche in exchange for a 2026 first, a 2028 conditional third, top prospect Calum Ritchie, and D-man Oliver Kylington. The conditions on the third-round pick were not met, as the Avs qualified for the playoffs. Kylington was later flipped to the Anaheim Ducks for future considerations. Nelson, who was on an expiring deal worth $6 million a year annually, held a 16-team modified no-trade clause. The Islanders' final offer to Nelson was believed to be a 3-year deal worth approximately $7.5 million per year. Now, quick aside, that dollar amount is reasonable for the caliber of player that Brock Nelson is. I mean, he had 69 points in 23-24, 75 points in 22-23. This previous year, he only had 56 points, but he was split between two separate organizations, and unfortunately, he also had 0 goals in the playoffs for the Avalanche, which is not ideal, but still, he was there. 4 assists is not bad, though, I will say. The only problem is Brock Nelson is 33 years old, so if you wanted to say that he has better days ahead of him, you're probably not going to get that entirely. Nelson has been a very good player. It's just a question of how long his scoring ability in this league is going to last. But ultimately, Nelson had the opportunity to get $7.5 million with the Isles. He said no. D'Amico's article then writes this: RG can report that the Winnipeg Jets had a deal in place with the Islanders, but Nelson declined to waive his no-trade clause. Given the package the Islanders received from Colorado, and with GM Lou Lamoriello stating post-deadline we had to get back a top prospect, it's believed that one of Brad Lambert, Colby Barlow, or Braden Yeager would have been included in the proposed Winnipeg deal, along with draft picks. Now, this is where we dive into some of the nice young talent that is in Winnipeg. Brad Lambert is a center and nephew of former Islanders coach Lane Lambert. He had scored 35 points with the AHL's Manitoba Moose and has had 1 assist in 7 NHL games. Colby Barlow, a left winger, tallied 61 points in 62 games with the Oshawa Generals, and Braden Yeager, a center acquired from Pittsburgh in exchange for Rector McGordy, posted up 82 points in the WHL, splitting the season between Moose Jaw and Lethbridge. The article then talks about how Calum Ritchie made the Avalanche roster out of training camp, and then he got traded over to New York. I think that's a really good pickup. Ritchie's an underrated prospect, but a lot of these other guys from Winnipeg also would have been interesting too. Lane Lambert's nephew, Brad Lambert, in particular. There was a time where Brad Lambert was projected as a top 3 overall pick in the 2022 NHL Entry Draft. A lot of folks were saying, okay, it's going to be Wright, Savoy, and Lambert. Those 3 headlining the draft class, and we said that as early as 2018, it did seem like. But Ultimately, Brad Lambert slipped through the cracks there and fell into, I think it was the end of the first round, something like that. He was almost a second-round guy, which is not where a lot of folks projected him to being years before his draft-eligible season. But nevertheless, this would have also been a really interesting pickup for the New York Islanders had a guy like Brad Lambert found himself with the same team as his uncle. Let's talk about the trade itself, though, because for Brock Nelson to have rejected going to the Winnipeg Jets, it does seem very interesting that he declined to waive his no-trade eligibility, and I get it, like, he has the right to do that. He has the right to say, okay, yeah, no, I don't want to go there, I want to stay here. It's just, the writing was on the wall heading into the trade deadline period. It was there for quite a while. Everybody sort of knew, yeah, the Isles are not really going to be too competitive this year. They're not going to make the dance. Brock Nelson is a top-tier potential trade chip, and he pretty much will be going over to a contender to help him out in the playoffs. But it's interesting to me how he said no to going to the top team in the West. To the top team in the league, really. The Winnipeg Jets were first overall in every category, it seemed like, and I get that they did get eliminated, so it's not like they had the best run in the Stanley Cup playoffs, but to think about how the Jets were so good, but they still were not an attractive destination for a free agent to be who was coming into the last few months of his NHL contract, for him to not waive to Winnipeg, even though they were that good, I do kind of question what NHL players' overall thought process is when thinking about the Winnipeg Jets. Like, Brock, you don't need to re-sign in Winnipeg. You can just go over there, play 2 to 3 months worth of hockey with the Jets, and if you really don't like it, then you can leave. But they were the best team in the regular season this year, and a playoff favorite with the best goalie. I think it speaks volumes that even though Brock Nelson had the chance to get traded to Winnipeg, he straight up rejected it. Now, I get that there were some rumblings that Nelson would not want to go to a team in Canada, for example, and then there was also the entire Devon Toews angle, because Devon Toews, former New York Islander, was on Colorado, and it was reported that him and Brock Nelson were pretty good buddies, so I guess there is a little bit of that going around here. Maybe it's not necessarily like, oh yeah, he doesn't like Winnipeg. It's just there are reasons why he would want to go to Colorado more. But I do kind of wonder, if Nelson did go to Winnipeg, how would that look for the Jets heading into the playoffs? And how would the Islanders' return be, too? Brad Lambert, I think, is maybe the most interesting name out of there, but Braden Yeager, Colby Barlow, 2 CHL guys also doing pretty well. It is just kind of interesting, though, to note that this happened and this is being reported now. Yeah, Nelson blocked a trade to Winnipeg. Jets fans, I know y'all don't really mess with my content all too much, but if you do happen to stumble upon this video, how do you feel about Brock Nelson deciding not to get added to your team? He had 4 assists in 7 playoff games this year for the Avalanche. Would that kind of guy help you in this year's postseason run for your squad? If you're an Islanders fan, what are your thoughts about the potential of Colby Barlow or a Brad Lambert or somebody like that? Would you rather have them over Calum Ritchie? I know it doesn't really matter to you because you already traded Brock Nelson away, but let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this British Ash Rolls 99, and bye.